And now, coming to you live from Times Square in New York, New York, this is the bouncex Think Tank, your twice a week, every week look into behavior online and how we can make the internet more polite. As always, I'm your host, Peter Star Northrop, bringing you this time building a performance video strategy, how short form assets can build customer value, another astonishing presentation co-branded by the brilliant minds over at bouncex and Olapic. So let's just jump right in. So Robin Burgess, again, I'm just so excited to have you on the show here today, and I just want to begin discussing the state of content and the state of content marketing itself. So jumping right into this, folks, Robin, I'm just curious, as e-commerce brands get more and more sophisticated with their content marketing, we're seeing like a huge variety of methods cropping up in terms of using content and getting content both developed and used across the funnel. What are the brands that are really killing it in terms of building the right balance in their content and distribution strategy?
Yeah, so I've really been enjoying seeing for video distribution what Eloquy has been doing. They were a client of mine when I first joined bouncex in New York, and they work in the plus size women's fashion space and have just amazing designs to help women feel better represented by fashion. And some of the things that I've noticed them do in video really happens in the Instagram space, where they're doing takeovers of Instagram stories with some of the people who are working in their new stores and some of their customers. They've also really found their way in the YouTube space as well. They have some short form videos on there that really makes the content of their blog, the Style and Substance blog. So each month they have a cover story essentially where they're featuring a woman in power, who's sort of a part of their target market, and they video record her doing a photo shoot and feeling empowered wearing their clothes. And I really love seeing that in that space. I also get a lot of engagement through their audience with XOQ, which is on their site. It's their hashtag and their way of doing user engagement. And all of that really shows that they know their audience and that they're talking to her and that they're really trying to communicate to someone one-on-one. bouncex then takes those users who come to their site looking for that great content and helps them to engage even further, and makes that personal experience that they've received in the social media space live throughout their site by using our technology.
And that's what I like about that is it's setting up that conversation as well, because it's something a lot of brands need to really focus in on, is building that LTV game and building that conversation over time. So it's not just about having nice branded content and building your brand. It's also ensuring that you are establishing value across the board for your business. So I love that perspective. And let's keep going high level here. So Mark Harrison over at Olapic, let me know, on your end as well, what are some of the things that you're looking at in terms of like the brands that are really killing it in terms of their video strategy?
Yeah, I'm actually going to call out a couple because I think these two are really standing out. I think the first for me would be NH Hotels. So for those who potentially are dialing in from the States and don't know these guys own 400 hotels. They operate across 30 countries and have 4 different brands. But for these guys, obviously operating in a very competitive space, with things like Airbnb coming through. So for them, they really wanted to build a content strategy that would allow them to deliver sort of relevant and fresh content all the time. So that's actually where they thought they want to leverage guest content. So they wanted to start to use user-generated content that was created by guests who were staying within their hotel, because ultimately this content is perceived as more trustworthy. Consumers trust other consumers more than they trust necessarily the brand content that's being created. So suddenly this was a really effective way to actually really resonate with the audience they're trying to appeal to book the room and stay at their hotels. They did a fantastic job as well in recognizing the way that customers can interact with them. So they did this on site. They also actually started to tailor the content in emails. Obviously, the beauty of social content is it's global. So and everyone has a smartphone, and the quality of the photos are getting better and better. So that ability to sort of personalized content to users and personas was really effectively used in their emails. And then they actually started to use it in their paid activities as well, in ads and also social media. So I think they're really good on that side. They also did really well on the video creation piece. So they'd always done very well in regards to sort of creating long format videos, and more for stuff around TV or maybe longer format on YouTube. But I think what they recognized as well is consumer habits are changing as social media platforms change. We already spoke about things like Instagram stories. So one of the interesting bits here is they actually started to put a real focus in creating short format video that is constantly changing, so that they can actually serve relevant, unique experiences across things like Instagram stories, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So they actually started leveraging video creation tools. So Olympic have like content in motion to actually say, okay, my demand for video is getting bigger and bigger. And I'll talk about this tool a little bit later.
And I'm going to be really excited to get into the specifics as well. But like one thing that we are all really curious about is the transition to video in this industry has been so fast that a lot of us are really still reeling and trying to understand how video has changed the game. So Mark, sticking with you, can you tell us how video has kind of changed the whole content marketing sort of ecosystem before we kind of jump into specifics on how to really start utilizing that short form video? How has that changed the way we sort of like manage customer intent and sort of engage with our users across like what are ultimately a really wide range of platforms?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like video is increasing. I think social has absolutely poured fuel on the fire. But you're right, across all channels now, the expectation for video content has risen massively. So in general, essentially, it is a much more effective way to communicate with your customers. So testing video, whether it be in store, on site, or in the digital format versus sort of static content, is video is always outperforming. And what we're actually seeing as well is it's not just driving that engagement, but we're also seeing as well it's a great conversion tool. So we're seeing actually the likelihood of someone purchasing often is 2x higher when they've seen videos versus actually not actually looking at video content itself. So suddenly now you've got this new tool set where there's a high demand across multiple channels, and we also know that that converts very well. So yeah, for us, I think it is a big game changer.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of nuance there to jump into, but I don't want to sort of get bogged down into what we're talking the high level areas of strategy. So, Robin, is there anything that you've seen in terms of like when you are building that ecosystem across the whole customer funnel? Are there ways that video marketing and video content have really changed the way brands engage with users? Because a lot of us, judging from the audience right now, they're seeing the end of like the easy mode of content marketing. Because back when it was just articles and images and UGC, that was pretty simple to do. But now we have to live in this world where we're producing video. That's a little bit scary. From your perspective, Robin, has that changed that much? Is it that drastic a shift, or is it just like more like a call to be more relevant for brands?
Yeah, I mean, I have great respect for the challenge and the difficulty of producing video. You mentioned before that I have a food blog, and personally, I've been trying to get into figure out how to get video at quality for quite a while. And I think just overall having to produce that type of content is a big shift for marketers. But in terms of the power of video, again, it's becoming something that users more or less just expect. We're so inundated by video all around us that when that space, the purchase space, doesn't have that anymore, it's a little bit of a loss of an opportunity. I think to, how I can mindlessly watch video on Facebook, even on mute, and still be engaged with it. And that's the type of, engagement and watching through a 5-minute video with an ad with no sound on, that I want people to stay on the website and look at the products and continue to learn more about what I'm trying to sell. There's also opportunities to use video and that user engagement to, teach more people about your site. Going back to the Eloquy example, I noticed on their highlights on their Instagram stories, they were using video and short form video as a way of actually showcasing new product features on their site in a way that's engaging. And so one example is that they have a new chat feature, and so they were using video on Instagram in order to show users how to use that chat feature, so that their in-store representatives can work as personal shoppers to them. So it's really changing the game. It's giving people an opportunity to engage with the brands in a lot more personal way, and have a much better understanding of what the brand message is.
Absolutely. And one thing there too that I'm seeing, at least in the comments section, and just talking, our brands talking about this, is where there's a lot of fear there too, because what I'm seeing from a lot of our e-commerce friends, and if you're more in that general retail space, folks, let me know. A lot of our sort of pure play e-commerce and sort of e-commerce mixed with retail, I'm seeing a lot of people who are relying on very, very lean content shops as opposed to sort of like very robust brand marketing areas for like a very huge enterprises. So Mark, let me bring this back to you. Since a lot of us are relying on these really lean content shops, how are we supposed to tackle video with any efficacy without like a lot of really huge upfront investment? For me, this seems super difficult because there's just so many different kinds of video to produce and it's always going to be super slow. So how can we sort of manage tackling this here?
Yeah, I think you're hitting probably one of the hottest topics that we speak to when we speak to brands, is that, like you say, that the video is exploding and there's a huge demand for it. But matching that demand versus the creation cost is just an unequal actual equation. So particularly when you start looking at traditional video creation, you can be looking well in excess of 100,000 to 500,000 pounds or dollars or euros, wherever you're actually operating. And the other side to this as well is actually that content sometimes is only used potentially for TV, or it's just used for YouTube. It's actually not thought of to use across all your different channels. And then the final bit is the actual lead time and the creation time. The other side, we've talked about this a lot already, is relevancy of content. So I think one of the ways that we're helping many brands around this is actually around our tool, which is called Content in Motion. So essentially what we're helping to do is build out short format video that they can then start leveraging across their different marketing channels. So rather than necessarily using human teams and big productions, etc., we're trying to do it in a different way. So, for example, with the likes of Pottery Barn, etc., we are working with these guys to leverage our technology platform where they can drag and drop existing static images or videos that they have today, and then ultimately that then go create a video in the correct format they require to go use in their marketing channels. So suddenly now you're empowering teams who have lean content shops to be able to create content within minutes. They can test and learn before they actually start pushing that content out onto their marketing channels and paid activities. They can personalize that content based on interests. They can personalize it based on location. So, and also as well, it creates that uniformity across sort of capabilities. Often as well in different markets or different geographies, you may have a really big video team over here, or maybe more skill set here and not skill set over there, for example. So suddenly now, by sort of equaling the playing field and having a platform like this, it's proved something that's hugely valuable, especially when we start thinking about things like Instagram stories is something that demands content almost every day if you want obviously to be on that channel, and then obviously IGTV coming out and stuff like this as well. So yeah, I think this is some of the ways that we're actually helping brands to avoid that massive upfront development and also take a much sort of test and learn approach, as opposed to taking a very big gamble and investing a lot of money and crossing your fingers that it'll work.
Yeah, because there's a lot of testing you need to do as well, and there's a lot of ways of filling in that ecosystem. And what I'm excited for is jumping into the specifics of what kinds of short form video work for more for other parts of the funnel. What I am curious about though first is, and I think the best way to tackle this on the front end is to talk about customer intent first, because when we're talking about content marketing, we're talking about something living within a relevance ecosystem. We're discussing how we can make sure that our content is relevant to our buyers and customers. So Robin, let me bring you in for this first. For us, that critical component that brands leave out when they're trying to figure out their video strategy is the intent those customers have as they are viewing it itself and viewing these assets. How can we predict customer intent? Is there a way we can better serve it? Like, what are some of the variables we have to keep in mind as we're trying to adapt strategy to the video assets we already have?
Yeah, so the space that bouncex exists in, we really can understand the real-time actions and behaviors that users are taking on the page. And by taking those actions, we're able to know what their intent is. So for example, on a product detail page, how much time is a user spending on the page? That's an easy one. If they're spending longer time on the page, maybe they're actually reading the details that are there. Maybe they're checking out what's there. So then taking that a step further, are they scrolling down and actually getting to where your review section is? Are they engaging with those reviews that are there? Have they started to choose their product details? Have they gotten to your page and maybe chosen their color and looked for their size options? All of those things on a product detail page can tell you how much intent that user has to take that next step of adding to cart, which eventually leads to going on and making a purchase. So we need to, focus on reading that digital body language that a user is expressing on that page can really tell you a lot about the user's intent. The second side of that is really having an understanding of how that intent might be played out over multiple website visits. If you have a higher value product or a type of product that requires a little bit higher consideration than, say, for example, purchasing a dress, that user may be expressing their intent level over multiple visits to your site. I've worked with a client, Bowflex, at Bounce Exchange, where their products are pretty high value, and they also happen to have amazing video content. I think everyone's familiar with the old videos that they've been doing for the past 20, 30 years. But with such a high intent, value product, users might need to take several visits in order to make a purchase. And so you also have to think about, is this person returning to the site to engage over multiple visits? And that's really where people-based marketing comes in. We're able to have persistent identifiers where we can see that this is a user who took certain actions on one visit, and then even if they're returning on a different device, later on, we can still link that user through that persistent identifier and say, okay, this person we know has expressed this level of intent, and maybe they just need this extra little nudge in order to make the purchase. So now that I've identified this as a person who has super high intent, maybe they just need the last of the product specifications. Maybe they just need a video that's going to show them exactly how they can actually put that exercise equipment into their life and create a training plan using it. So once you understand the level of intent as that user is expressed across multiple visits, you can really tailor which video you show to match that level of intent.
And then on the production side, Mark, let me bring you back into this. As we're beginning that understanding of intent, how is it that you sort of schedule out that kind of video structure and that kind of video program that allows brands to serve all these different levels of intent? Like when you're looking in that perspective there, when you're looking at working with your clients, what's that game you play in terms of ensuring that our clients are getting that kind of service in terms of every video you make really matches customer intent across a lot of different modes? Because a lot of this can be predicted. It does come down to kind of an individual level, but you can sort of make those segments wherein if somebody's super high intent, they need this kind of asset. Is that something that should exist outside of our website, or is any sort of on-site content that is also valuable, if you can catch my drift?
Yeah, so I think from our sides, there's lots of ways that you can sort of predetermine the video content that you're going to serve. So from our sides, we, on the short format video perspective, it might be easier actually if we go into some slides that we can actually showcase it as well. But there's a Facebook methodology that we follow as well that works particularly well when you're trying to move your customers through, whether it be on email, on site, in social, etc., through the different actual down the sales funnel, should I say. So if I can quickly just show a couple of slides, it's broken into 4 different elements. So the first one that we would actually be looking at would be something that's called basic motion. Sorry guys, just clean my screen. So here we've got video formats, and what we're essentially looking to do is go through these 4. So the first is in regards to basic motion. So this is essentially a basic video just to actually grab somebody's attention. So this is a very good use case in social. The reason being here is the fact that attention spans are actually very small, very quick, sorry, particularly when you start skewing to a smaller audience. So actually this very small animation style is very good in regards to actually leveraging somebody's sort of attention span to actually make them dive in and go and explore a little bit further. The next one that you can look through is brand in motion. So you'll notice here that this is a evolution of the previous video that we saw. The difference here is the fact that they get the brand logo out straight away. So that's key in regards to sort of getting it, hey, we're Aveda, this is what we do. And then you can see they reinforce that message at the end of the video as well. So this is important, obviously, when you're looking at slightly different, maybe you're launching a new product range, or for example, so in this instance, it's essentials, or potentially a newer brand entering a new market. It's this kind of video content and methodology where, again, you're seeing how quick this video is. So this is 16 seconds, actually Facebook, or in general videos, particularly for the shorter format, we're finding these to be particularly short. The next one then we would look into would be benefit in motion. So this is where we're actually showcasing why would a consumer actually buy this? So what are the USPs, what are the benefits of your products over everyone else's? Why should I spend my hard-earned cash to buy your services or to buy your products themselves? So here you can see in this instance, they're really focusing on the USPs of the actual product itself, showcasing it in a really simple way, so as to delight the customer, but at the same time get to the message very quickly, so that we can actually drive that person either through to the actual site itself, or say if it were on the e-commerce experience, actually push them through so they add it to basket and then go and purchase. And then the final bit is demo in motion. So this is actually demonstrating the benefits that we've shown before, how to achieve them. So again, this may be better used in different formats. So potentially for those consumers who are slightly more loyal, already aware of the brand itself and aware of actually the products. Maybe they haven't fully converted, so you are retargeting, for example, or you're following up with an email, actually just showcasing actually how simple it is potentially to use the products and take advantage of those benefits is a really effective way of actually producing video content and influencing that intent.
And we'll get into how we can sort of make that game happen as well in terms of ensuring what we have is matching that intent and sort of like figuring out all the different ways to produce those different kinds of content. So what I'm going to make sure we have here, that's solid. All right. So Robin, take me through this then, because what I'm thinking about here, the main issue that I'm seeing is that I have a lot of strategists on the line here. And as a strategist, we're trying to figure out how we can help our content squad map out the kinds of media that we need to produce across different kinds of intent. How do I map that out, and how do I look at that at a high level? Like, what kinds of video work best for which levels of intent? Is that something that will always exist on site, or is it something that's going to exist mostly in my retargeting space?
Yeah, I mean, it could exist in both spaces. I think if you take a few steps back, think about the conversion funnel. You know, at the very top of the conversion funnel is awareness. And just as Mark was showing some great use cases that kind of bring you through the conversion funnel, that's how you can think about the types of content to produce. So in awareness space, maybe you're thinking about sort of a how-to video or a way of showcasing how your product, how your brand solves a problem. Then maybe you're getting a little deeper in the funnel towards something like the interest space, and maybe thinking, let's think fashion, social proof. So showing users who are enjoying your product can help people to, you know, communicate their interest or attach interest to that. Then you get a little deeper into evaluation, you may want more of a demo video. So I think it's about understanding where the different pages on your website or throughout your entire marketing stream, where they fall into that conversion funnel, having an understanding of how much traffic you're getting on those pages and how many eyeballs might you have on those videos, and also understanding what is essentially the conversion rate from each of those stages or from each of those channels. So really figure out where the worthy investment is. If you have all of your eyeballs on Facebook and none on Instagram, like maybe it makes more sense to focus there and focus on an awareness-focused video content that's going to bring people back to your site and get them straight into high intent actions.
And I love that, because the main thing we have to keep in mind here, audience, is the game we're trying to play here, instead of giving you the right answer, is the path to the right answer. So as you figured how intent works on your own site, this is how you begin to think about matching that intent. Maybe you have a bunch of users on Facebook. Maybe people only sort of engage with you by coming directly to your site, and you define those moments on site where perhaps a video modal is the best strategy forward. As we think about that, we'll keep getting into more specifics as we move on through this. But let's make sure that we are talking about building that performance video strategy and really talking about the power of short form videos. We saw some examples, so let's try to think about a lot of the examples we can use sort of outside of that, the more strategic mindset here. So Mark, let me bring you back into this. There's just so much variety in terms you can produce. I feel like we should take the pressure off by talking about those similar strategies I have with UGC, where I'm relying on my audience. Can I rely on UGC video as well, or am I talking about different kinds of in-house production? When you're trying to manage that, is it a UGC game? Is it more of an in-house team? When you're managing your short form video production, how do you begin to think about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it opens up sort of a Pandora's box of questions within the business as well, because it actually starts to say who owns content and who's responsible for it and which channels do they go into, etc. And that's actually some very interesting discussions when we go into big brands, because they all want authentic content, they all want video content, but how do you get those teams to actually talk together? How do you get an aligned strategy on that piece as well? And then how do you make it cost efficient so that you can actually serve it into the markets, and then how do you distribute it? So it's a really interesting point, actually. And often we have the discussion, or can we do both? Can I leverage a user generated content strategy and as well start launching a short form video strategy? Well, I think the answer for us is yes, and I think the reason behind it though is, what does the consumer want? So let's take out sort of maybe the brand's issues, etc., and focus on what are consumers' expectations today. Consumers spend over 5 years of their life consuming social content, so they are looking in their spare time to consume authentic and video content itself. So ultimately, brands need to recognize that they need to be able to serve that. And if you want to remain competitive in a market where organizations are always looking to grow, then you really need to be serving both those needs. So from our perspective, I think, yes, you should be looking at both. You should be looking at how can I leverage my authentic content and start serving that into my marketing channels, and then how can I start using video as well. And I think you touched on it before. Every brand is slightly unique in regards to test and learn. What are the channels that work effectively? What aren't? What content resonates with my audience versus doesn't resonate with my audience? And the beauty of sort of both the tools and technology is, one, because we're leveraging user-generated content, that there's 80 million photos put up on Instagram every day, for example. So you've got an abundance of content coming through that potentially you could be leveraging. On the other side of it, because video creation, we can make it very lean, ultimately make the ability to create videos in minutes, change the copy, etc. So you can localize the content that you're serving, and it's mobile optimized as well. So very suitable for the way people consume content today. Suddenly a lot of those challenges go away. And because it's a technology platform that anyone can log into as well, that just sort of addresses some of those cross-barrier challenges that people have seen as well. So I think, yeah, absolutely. If we think about it from the consumer's perspective, what do they demand? They absolutely demand authentic experiences in video, and that's why we would always recommend that brands try and execute on that.
And I love looking in that as well, and I love like making sure that we're discussing it has to be a balance and discussing how that balance actually works. Mark, a bunch of questions kind of popped up during that moment, though, and I want to address them real fast. One thing our audience is very curious about is ensuring that they are setting up the right kinds of asks for UGC video. Like, a lot of us feel really confident in getting that UGC strategy and sort of curating a lot of our UGC, but one thing we do want to see is how we can sort of request or set up campaigns wherein we get our audience to give us that user-generated video as opposed to images or reviews. When you're looking at the asks some of your clients are making, like, how is that question working, and how are we able to set that up better? Like, what's the game you play in terms of asking your clients for video? What are your clients asking their prospects and customers for video of their products? Is it people using it? Is it people sort of like reviewing it in video format? What are the ways that you've seen your clients have success in terms of making the ask for video itself?
Yeah, so if I break them out one by one in regards to the UGC then video, so you're exactly right. For the user-generated content side, if you need the content being created on social platforms to be able to then actually showcase it and leverage it as a marketing and sales tool. So one of the key things for Olopic is absolutely is the promotion. So normally what we would do is do an evaluation and understand, okay, what content exists out there today, and sort of give you a grade, right? So what's the quality and quantity of content being created? How relevant is it for the upcoming campaigns that are coming through? The next step then is actually the promotion of it. So you'll be amazed by very simple steps in regards to just doing call to actions for people to share content around campaigns on things like social, email, newsletter, website. You think about how much site traffic you get, etc., to these places. If you can just give out a small call to action, suddenly you're actually potentially saving hundreds of thousands in regards to content creation costs versus potentially going externally and creating it in other ways, or using up lots of time in-house. So on the user-generated content side, it really sits around sort of an omni-channel promotion piece. And that really plays in nicely. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later in regards to how do I make my customers more loyal? Because ultimately, when you go and take a customer's photo and then potentially go and use it on a website, for example, you're essentially giving them 50 minutes of fame. So actually now the sort of affinity to that brand is much higher. So it's actually a very powerful experience. On the video creation side, so the tool itself that Olopic has is something that the brand would use. So ultimately, it'd be an online platform where you would log in. There'd be custom built templates for say, that the brand would want to create, and ultimately they could just take all their existing imagery, so that could be user generated, brand shot, maybe stuff they've created for editorials, existing videos, etc., and they can manipulate those to create new short format videos, play around with the copies, etc., change the languages, and those can be created in a couple of minutes, and they can start putting it into a different channel. So that one there is really sitting, and we would share sort of best practices, and then start putting it into the channels, and then again focusing test and learn. I think that's sort of the biggest thing for us. Is not everyone is the same, and I'm sure every brand listening knows that. So how can I learn, and how can I fail fast so that I know, okay, this doesn't work, but this does work, and then work from there.
Yeah, and what's really cool there is making sure that you have that spirit of experimentation too. Remember, you're going to be finding a lot of things out about your audience, about your brand itself while you're going through this process. So what I love is making sure that you are setting it up as a conversation. Robin, let me bring you back in as well. I know that we don't do a lot of things around video itself, but is there any insight you can provide in terms of customer intent when we're thinking about exactly how to make these kinds of asks? It seems there's a lot of different ways you can sort of set up the ask for UGC itself, whether it be video, whether it be just general UGC. And from your perspective, how high intent is this kind of ask? Like very generally, like no needs for specifics. And how would you set this up? Is this something that you do in email? Is this something you do post-purchase? Where are the places that we can begin to test and find the ways that this can be an effective strategy for us?
Yeah, so I think the first way that brands will casually ask for user-generated content is simply just by showcasing the beautiful UGC that others have provided to them. So an example of that, if you go to the client website, if you go to a brand website and you see a showcase of images or videos that users have created, anyone who comes to the site is going to be like, oh, wow, I love those women who are showcased, or I love these people and they're doing such great things with this brand and I want to be one of those people one day. So I think that's the softball way of getting people already interested in participating and creating user-generated content. In terms of when to actually make an ask, some brands will choose to actually have a section within the product detail page where they'll have a way of users submitting directly through the site. For some, it may make better sense, especially if it's a higher consideration product. It may make better sense to get out of the way of the user's path to purchase and not make that ask up front, but to wait until after people have purchased, and then within a post-purchase series to communicate, the value of adding your voice to the story about this product by submitting your own user-generated content. And the people who are really loyal to your brand, who love what you're doing in this space, who love the product, those might be the same type of people who are writing reviews, but could just as easily be submitting video content. And it could be that they're doing it already. There's tons of people creating video content every day on Instagram and on Facebook, on YouTube, that are doing reviews of products. So if you can put that ask out in front of people after they've made a purchase and get them to showcase their experience with the product, certainly make that upfront, but even better, make it post-purchase.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of that, depends on the testing you do as well. A lot of that game is going to be figuring out your audience. So, Robin, just very briefly, while the audience is really curious about this specific aspect of it, maybe it does work post-purchase for you. Maybe it works in another space. When you are looking at, the initial analytics from a client, when you're looking at the initial engagement across a consumer funnel, what are you looking for in terms of finding those moments of really good engagement? I understand it's always an issue of testing, but are there any metrics that stick out in terms of, oh, hey, this is how I know this is a great page that really engages? Is it just like your industry knowledge, or is there certain things you look at when you're looking in analytics, or looking at sort of how brands are engaging with, how prospects are engaging with a certain site? If you're catching my drift there.
Yeah, I mean, industry knowledge helps, but it all comes down to looking at the analytics, because as much as you think you know about the market, it can change so dramatically from site to site, and even from month to month within a client's site, based on the type of traffic that they're sending there. So I think that looking at analytics is the #1 go-to. Really, really helpful if you have events set up in your Google Analytics or your Omniture, whichever platform that you're using, so that you can actually see the step conversions from one page to a next, and see essentially that complete conversion funnel, and have an understanding of where people are spending more time on the page versus where people are falling off, and even looking at that from all the individual traffic sources. Say, for example, your Facebook content comes to the site and they might come directly to product detail pages, but so many of them are bouncing. You have that understanding versus you looking at that entire product detail page and all of its traffic sources and not seeing the problem of that Facebook traffic source causing bounces on the page. So I think it's really important to do, a very deep dive into your data. You don't want to waste money investing in video production and find that, you're putting it on the wrong spot, or that you're serving the wrong needs. So certainly start with looking at analytics, create some hypotheses as to how exactly you can affect and better increase whatever your goal is for that page. If your goal is to increase downloads, if your goal is to get people to add to cart on that page, and think about specifically when you're designing your tests, and even thinking before video tests, even doing language tests on the site, and figuring what's the right messaging that users want to see, and planning that out based on your analytics and what goals you're trying to meet for each step of the conversion funnel.
Yeah, exactly. The main game is going to be understanding that hypothesis creation and understanding how you can adapt those hypotheses over time. So I love that sort of respect to like actual goals and actual science. So we've discussed a lot of that in terms of setting up that conversation, and I love that. But let's bring it back to video a bit because that's something our audience is sort of clamoring for. So Mark, let me bring you back into this and let's talk about those different kinds of video formats. We've talked a lot about sort of setting things up within the Olopic platform itself to go omni-channel. Let's talk about those specific kinds of formats that really work. We just kind of went way deep into UGC video. Let's get back to the stuff that we produce in-house ourselves. What other short form video formats work out really well in this context? Is there anything else? Like we've seen the attention grabbing stuff on Facebook. We've seen different ways to sort of leverage Instagram marketing. Are there any formats that you've been seeing be really effective that we haven't discussed here yet? What are some of those other kinds of video that really work in terms of getting people to either engage with you or getting people to come back to the site or convert or whatever goals you may have?
Yeah, I think if we start thinking about potential other examples, so if we take one example within regards to beauty, how-to videos are hugely popular and drive huge engagement and very powerful for brands, both from sort of an engagement but also a branding piece as well. So this here is slightly longer format, but we still recommend that it doesn't stay too long as well. But leveraging this sort of content within your actual website experience itself. So perhaps on the product detail page, for example, to sort of give someone the confidence to actually go and use the product. Sometimes if it's a newer product for someone and they're not, let's say, 100% certain on the way they were going to use it, that can be the information maybe that they wanted, that they needed, sorry, to actually just push them over the line to actually go and purchase the product. And in reality, the way it is today, they're not going to sit and read loads of descriptions necessarily and follow how-to instructions. People want content and they want to consume it simply. So that's where video can be a really powerful way in regards to sort of how-tos in that sense. I think other ways that you can do it as well that we've seen brands is obviously we're becoming a much more aware society in regards to sort of social responsibilities from an organizational standpoint. So I think organizations can start thinking about sort of video creation in those ways and then start pushing them out onto their different channels. So again, this may sit on a web. This could actually be in an email capacity or newsletters. So often now the reason people shop from organizations isn't necessarily just price, it isn't just products, but actually how sustainable is that brand? How are they helping the environment? Are they harming the environment, for example? This is now a new decision criteria that comes into consumers' mind before they actually purchase. So again, what is an effective way to get that communication across? Well, actually try and potentially leverage that in a video format so it's easy to consume, it's mobile friendly, and again, do it in email where ultimately you can actually reach out to potentially some of your most loyal customers as well. So there are a couple of the ideas that you could potentially be doing in regards to leveraging different types of video content. I guess the final one for me is sort of brand awareness as well. So again, just thinking in regards to above the line format, if we can keep things short and snackable, that's the stuff that we find drives really high engagement, particularly if you're looking at things, say, at events or in stores, it can work really well. So again, people's attention spans can be slightly shorter. So actually looking at potentially in a larger format, I mean, really interesting things, just talking out loud, we've worked where we've sort of collected user-generated content from an event, filtered it, make sure it's good quality, and then actually used it at an event in a video format. So there's some really creative things that you can do to sort of, again, so about that personalized experience, but in a different format.
And that's something that's why video itself has become very exciting to our audience, because we are all beginning to see that the game in e-commerce marketing and the game in relevance marketing itself is not necessarily forcing people to convert, but is getting folks to maintain focus. That's the whole game here. If you can sort of gently and respectfully engage your prospects' focus a little bit better in a lot of different ways, that's how you're going to get folks to actually convert. That's the game we're trying to play here in terms of building those conversion journeys, because it's definitely not about sort of harassing people into buying. Those days are over and they weren't really good days anyway. It's really about maintaining that focus, which kind of brings us into sort of that next section. We've talked a lot about, again, that distribution strategy on Facebook, in social, but Robin, let me bring you back into this. So for content like this, when we're discussing how we distribute these videos and how we distribute short form video, is there any way that email plays into this? Is there any way that on-site plays into this? When you're thinking about these sort of high engagement pieces of video, they can really bring that focus back. Should this just live in our retargeting channels, or are there other places where you see this could really work out? If you can take us through sort of that really complex part of this real quick.
Yeah, video can certainly live in email space, and thankfully the technology has improved significantly over the past few years that video in email is a possibility. It really just comes down to where is that user in their product life cycle and or in their customer life cycle, and what are you trying to communicate via video. If you have a product announcement, if you're announcing a new partnership via video, if there's a new feature of your website you want to tell people about, certainly take them off of the website and get them engaged and enthused to come back. Even if it's just, video that doesn't have any words to it, that's a great way of getting people to open and click your emails and keeping that content fresh, so that when you're sending other type of messages by email, they're still looking for something fresh and exciting to be coming from your brand. So that's definitely in the email space. On the on-site space as well, certainly we've been talking about the power all along.
No, I get that too, and it really comes down to that testing space. And video should just be something that adds flavor to campaigns as well. So really like that perspective. Mark, one thing that we are curious about too, we've talked a lot about format, but one thing we've completely ignored that my audience is literally screaming me about is length. So Mark, in your experience, do you have any sort of view in terms of how length plays into efficacy for video? We're all of the mind that shorter is better, but we don't really understand how short is too short, or if shortness is actually the main issue there. So when we say short form, when you're looking at video length, do you have any data that shows what the optimal length is? Is there anything we should consider for different stages in the funnel? When you're trying to figure that out, what are the ways that you and your clients look at that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think what we're finding is that actually there's definitely the need now and again for long format, but actually short format, typically we try to encourage for 15 seconds or less. And particularly if you're actually looking to do videos, per se, on social channels, for example, because you're doing paid activities, etc., we would actually recommend that you move even quicker. I mean, people scroll through 90 meters of content a day on social channels. So suddenly now you've really got to grab someone's attention in a couple of seconds. So realistically, to do very long format, suddenly you're potentially going to get a drop off and you're going to see your video views go down. So I think from a best practice standpoint, we always scream and say, hey, try and use 15 seconds as the max. And then if you can actually bring that down even further, then great. There are nuances. So obviously I mentioned before beauty and how-tos. Obviously to do it in 15 seconds, they'd have to move pretty quickly. So there are a couple of nuances based on what they're actually doing. So how-tos are slightly different for sort of beauty or DIY. But I think if the focus is similar to the videos that we showed a little bit earlier in regards to just moving someone through the sales funnel, recommendation would be 15 seconds. In social, we'd say a lot quicker because, yeah, the attention pans are so small today that you really need to capture someone's attention really, really quickly.
Exactly, and that is a huge game, especially on mobile as well, which we didn't even begin to get into. But one great thing about video is those attention spans on mobile are even shorter. And so when you're thinking about your goals, video can really get people to your site, and then you have moments to sort of keep that engagement going, either by grabbing somebody's email address or giving them a very, very strong thing to engage with very quickly. Remember, when you're trying to maintain this focus and you're trying to figure out those lengths and formats that work, your main game is making sure that you sort of have very fast goals and you're honoring those attention spans. So maybe it's just grabbing a quick email address, maybe it's engaging somebody to get to a desktop or something else. Those conversion rates on mobile are going up though, so it's a matter of really structuring that mobile site as well. Just keep that in mind. We had a lot of questions there. I don't want to get through too many of those nuances. We have a bunch of questions about metrics as well as we sort of refine and finalize our email strategy. But for right now, since we are so close to the end here, ladies and gentlemen, we could really keep going on for hours in this conversation. There are so many nuances to pull apart in this video marketing lifecycle. So we could keep going on for hours, but unfortunately, time is a thing and we all have to get back to our jobs and stuff. So before we get into any of that, ladies and gentlemen, just let me know, what would you like to receive more information on? How would you like this conversation to continue? Our polling system actually just finally went live again. So just let me know, ladies and gentlemen, would you hear more about a behavioral audit from bouncex? Would you hear more about the boundless insights available from our friends at Olapic? Would you hear more about both of those things? Would you hear more about neither? So let us know exactly how this conversation should continue for you folks. There's a lot of specifics we need to get into. There's a lot of very specific questions that we actually can't get into for the duration of this presentation, but this will also help us figure out exactly how to structure the next presentation to go even further down this rabbit hole as we help y'all figure out exactly what kinds of short form video work for your funnel, as well as what kinds of intent you can discover on your own site. Audience, I've been blown away by your questions. Robin Burgess, thank you so much for your astonishing insight. Mark Harrison, just going through video with you has been absolutely astonishing. We have a couple more questions, a couple of ways to round out this conversation, But audience, let us know how you'd like to continue on the back end with us. So thank you so much. I'm going to close this poll, ladies and gentlemen, and then just getting right back into this. So Mark, talking more about the sort of blood and guts of video itself, when we're looking for efficacy, what are some of those metrics that you look at? We had a really good conversation about on-site metrics for content in general, but when you're looking at video, maybe within the, if it exists within the Olympic tool itself, if not, no big deal. But when you're looking at video metrics, what are the things you're looking for in terms of knowing something's more engaging or less engaging? And is there anything that might be surprising in terms of understanding how video metrics work?
Yeah, so I think from our side, I mean, it depends on the platform you're looking for, but we touched on it there. So you asked the question, and this is the burning question for a lot of organizations, is sort of the view duration. So how much of the video did they actually watch? And I think that gives you a really powerful insight into the sense of, are you creating the right length of content for what your audience are demanding? I think sometimes there can be sort of that mindset that, oh, we want to get all the information across this person so quickly, and actually they're not actually watching all the way through. So I think we would always say keep in mind on that one. I think the other bits for us in regards to the metrics, I mean, Robin touched on some of the main ones that we would normally say in regards to it, depending on the objective of it. Obviously, if we're looking from an awareness piece, we would look at things potentially like reach. If we were looking in regards to, say, mobile downloads on social, you would start measuring those, etc., with the call to actions. I think the other one for me that's interesting as well, though, is we were talking earlier about this, is how much time and resource and cost is this taking? I think, yes, there's always that end of the funnel in regards to, okay, what's it achieving, but what's it costing the organization as well? I think sometimes this can only be reviewed on an annual basis, for example. So I think the other bit as well is keeping a mindset in regards to how efficiently am I getting the content out, how quickly, we've touched on the Gale to test and learning and using the metrics to see it, but actually looking at how long does that process take as well. Because I think the other bit for me as well in regards to a metric and what's really we've seen help in regards to performance is speed of creation. So if something super relevant is happening at a specific time, actually then serving content around that is necessarily going to resonate more. So, for example, there's the Football World Cup going on at the moment. England are doing very well. So actually, if you were a relevant product or service around that and you start doing messaging around that, actually that would be super powerful. So I think, yeah, totally agree with everything Robin said, and then probably just a few additional ones.
Definitely. And there's a lot to keep in mind there as well. I think one thing that is really exciting too is that once you really begin mastering your short form video strategy, it's figuring out those moments where you can be hyper relevant to the moment that you're marketing in as well. Like if you are currently in the UK and you're a part of this magic moment where maybe the cup is coming home and England's doing super well, is that something that sort of matches too? But it's one of those things where you have to have balance as well. You can't get caught up in too much hype. You can't just be going moment to moment for the sake of being topical. Make sure when you are being as agile as that you have a really strong voice in both your video and your content itself, and that your topical moments are matching that voice. That is the absolute key there, and that is how you make sure that your content maintains that relevance. So I've been really delighted to have that perspective there. Robin, I know we discussed those on-site metrics and we discussed video metrics as well. Was there anything else on the metrics side that you think we should touch on and keep in mind as we're beginning to sort of examine the efficacy of our content and video strategy? Is there anything that you think we should be looking at?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all of the metrics that Mark has just said, but underlining incrementality. Again, if you're investing in this and a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, you should know that having that video on that page, that for every impression you're, helping those conversion rates, be it a step conversion of getting more people to click, getting more reach and getting more eyeballs on your website, or ultimately conversion rate and revenue. And making sure that you're creating a testing environment where you can measure incrementality and know for a fact what that return on spend is going to be. So I would just underline that and make sure to have very clean control groups and know that you need to express incrementality when you're designing your test. Don't just have a couple of different variations that don't have very clean difference between the two variations. If you're testing A/B versus a control, make sure that you're actually setting up very clear parameters in your tests so that you can see exactly the lift that it's producing, and then you'll be able to optimize on that and get yourself to the next level and the next level by designing tests that will make an impact.
Absolutely. I'm just so excited we got to discuss incrementality for a hot second, because that is going to be the most important perspective you have when you are figuring out these content strategies. A lot of us will be so focused on either the revenue dollars that video provides, or they'll be focused on two very narrow micro conversions. Make sure you're understanding how your content levels people up through the funnel and measuring against that. I love that perspective, Robin. I love talking about clean control groups, and I will never get tired of discussing incrementality. So I've been so delighted having this perspective here, ladies and gentlemen. I've been so delighted to have all of you here. We're beginning to round things out over here. We're beginning to get to the point where we tie this all together. So, audience, thank you so much for all your perspective. As we get through this, as we begin to tie all this together, Robin Burgess, any final thoughts from you as we sort of like begin thinking about this? Is there anything that we can begin thinking about before we begin to read the credits here? Again, it's been a wild ride. Thank you so much for your awesome perspective today.
Yeah, just top level, go on your analytics site right now, figure out where are the moments that you can impact users, what are the types of videos that will speak to that particular need to get that step conversion, and design a testing plan where you'll actually be able to see the return on investment there.
Absolutely. And then Mark Harrison, again, it's also been really astonishing having you on the show as well. Thank you for your really detailed insights in terms of making sure we have a really good understanding of how video really fits in all the aspects of our funnel, and also just taking away a lot of the fear that we have when we're thinking about how to produce video, especially like lots of really small granular pieces of video content. Are there any final thoughts from you as we begin thinking about that and begin like getting excited about this new testing environment where we can build a performance video strategy? Any other pieces of advice you can offer us as we begin that process for ourselves?
Yeah, I think sort of my summary points would sit around taking a look at your content strategy today and sort of analyzing how authentic is this content. Is it necessarily, could I be using user generated content? On the video creation piece, how agile, how much cost sits here, how much resource is being used. We spoke as well about the incrementality. Have I built out a way to test and learn very quickly? And then the other bit for me as well is everyone's unique and different. Everyone has different needs. So how can I service that and service personalized and localized content as well? So do I have a scalable way to achieve that? Yes or no? If I do, fantastic. You guys are killing it. If not, let's see what's out there and see what opportunities lie if we should change things slightly.
Exactly. It's all about figuring out all those opportunities. Mark Harrison, thank you so much for all your perspectives as well. Robin Burgess from bouncex, it's been really great having you on the program as well. I've been delighted having your perspectives in terms of incrementality and understanding how content fits in the funnel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been really a great ride for this presentation. Just so you know, this has been another edition of the bouncex think tank here twice a week, every week, looking to behavior online and how we can make the internet more polite. This presentation was produced, hosted, and voiced by me, Peter Starr Northrop. Ladies and gentlemen, just so you're aware, our script supervisor for this presentation was Dimas Marchadharma. Our demand generator is Paul #TheMachineLee, and our executive producer is Sarah Bowman. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. And as always, we like to leave you with peace, love, and behavioral intelligence. Everyone be well. Thank you so much.